So I'll now call this meeting to order, seeing Councillor Hosanek on the horizon. Good evening. Somebody just rushed here from work, I can tell. So this evening, we have one public meeting, and that involves 411 Wellington Street, and that's in Berryfield. I'll just read the public notice. Notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes which will be available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning, Building and Licensing Services. The purpose of the planning meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Exemption to this rule is outlined in bylaw number 2006-75 to delegate various planning approvals to staff and adopt certain procedures for the processing of planning applications subject to delegated authority. Council has authorized staff to use discretion in determining if an application can be a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process. Information gathered at public meetings is then referred back to Planning, Building, and Licensing Services. Staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to the Planning Committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. The committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council. City Council has the final say on the applications from the city's perspective. Following council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and anyone with an interest in the matter may file an appeal. Interested persons are advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Municipal Board. That should probably now read the Ontario Tribunal, local tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So, with that, we'll get started, and I'll invite the planners for the proponents to make their submission. Thank you.
Good evening. That's better. My name is Margot Watson. I'm a planner with Photon Consultants, and I'm here with my colleague, Yuko Leclerc, and we're representing Berryfield Limited Partnership in an application for rezoning. Sorry, this is just So this application relates to a property within Berryfield Village. It's located quite centrally. It's in the location of the former school that has now been demolished. It's just to the south of St. Mark's Anglican Church, surrounded quite a bit by D&D lands, as it's right on the edge of Berryfield and close to Highway 15. If you look at Berryfield on the whole, as most of you know, there's the Berryfield Rock Garden. You're close to the Kingston Military Community Sports Center and the Cataraqui River. As I already said, this is the site of the J. Horton Public School that was demolished. The site's about 2.5 hectares in size. It has 150 meters frontage on Wellington Street. This is a rezoning to permit residential uses, including a retirement residence on the site. This is an interesting aerial photo because it does show the site after the school has been demolished, and you can see where there were the school fields, and to the north, quite a bit of, there's trees and shrubs and things, basically left in a natural state. You can just barely see that there are some walking paths that have happened just naturally by people that go through to the north towards the church. So I'm going to sort of give a bit of a policy context, that was a locational context, talk a little bit about what wants to be put on the site, some of the consultation we've done, and then have a look at the zoning that we've submitted to be reviewed and looked at with city staff. So first of all, this is an excerpt from the official plan. So the subject lands, there's 2 schedules that are relevant. First of all, it's within a housing district, and also the lands are designated residential. So clearly the intent has been set in the official plan for the lands to be used for residential purposes. So as we say here, in bold, the proposed rezoning will implement official plan policy that's already been set. So currently the lands are zoned special institutional I-8. This is a site-specific zone that only relates to the school that was used there, that was there and is now gone. So no matter what is happening on this site, except another school, a rezoning will have to happen. And again, I go back to the fact that the official plan designates the lands for residential, so that would be the intent, that there be a rezoning to allow a residential use. As I'll talk about later, we're proposing a site-specific R3 zone that incorporates provisions from existing zones within the Pittsburgh Township zoning bylaw. Another document that's very important is the Berryfield Heritage Conservation District Plan. So this whole area is designated, and this plan provides any guidelines for conserving the heritage characteristics of Berryfield. So any new development will have to have regard, have to look at this plan. It is designated under Part 5 of the Heritage Act, so a heritage permit will be required. What this means is that this would have to go to the Heritage Committee for consideration and a recommendation by city staff and the Heritage Committee to council to approve a heritage permit before anything could be developed on this site. So looking at what we're doing right now, this is purely an application for rezoning. For anything to actually happen on the ground here, there's a number of things that would have to happen. As I already discussed, you'd have to get a heritage permit. So detailed plans, a heritage impact statement would have to be prepared, very detailed drawings of an actual building prepared, and they'd have to be submitted first to the city for city staff to review, but also to the Heritage Kingston Committee to review and recommend on an approval to council. And then that actual bylaw is passed by council. Another thing is site plan control. So before a building can actually get their building permit, they'd have to enter into site plan agreement with the City of Kingston. The site plan agreement is the very detailed document that gets down into what the actual site will look like. So it's the layout of the building on the site, it's the number of parking spaces, it's where curbs go, it includes landscape plans, how the site is serviced. So it's very detailed drawings that are needed to get to the building permit stage. An application we're not applying for, but I wanted to mention here, is if there was ever a land division of some sort on the site, if a parcel was going to be parceled off, it would have to go through a full process again, so a plan of subdivision or a severance. Again, these are public applications. Severances go through the land division committee, plan of subdivision would come through council and this committee. The last thing that happens is any zoning that's put on this site will have a holding provision attached to it. So if you see a zoning in the zoning bylaw and it has an H on the end, that means it has the holding provision. And that's put there to make sure that any requirements of the city are met before it can actually, again, before a building permit can be issued. So in this case, that their site plan has been approved, that the heritage permit has been achieved. So even if this land is zoned, without all these other application processes, a building couldn't actually happen. So now getting into looking a little bit more at what they actually want to do on the site. When the applicant first was looking at this site, before they even purchased it, they realized it's in the Berryfield area in this Heritage Conservation District, and that comes with its special considerations and things to consider when they're figuring out what they're going to put on the site. So they actually did go to the Berryfield Village Association. They had they had one meeting with them before they decided to buy the property, and they showed a couple of options. As you'll see there, the things have evolved through discussions. I won't go through all the points. On my next slide, I'll get through sort of what the priority items are. But one of the first things that came out of those discussions was, they showed two options, one with parking on the west side and one with parking on the east. And through discussions with residents, they realized parking on the east is preferred and moving the building, towards the east and Highway 15. So that's just one example. Another option was presented in October of 2017. In there, it started getting into looking a little bit more at what might happen along Wellington Street, what would happen with the roof pitch, whether it's sloped and not sloped. And then sort of the latest iteration was shown in November of 2017. And that also went to Heritage Committee just for a pre-consultation and get some initial comments from them. Excuse me. So, as I said, there was quite a bit of consultation back and forth. I should have said, in addition, there have been discussions with the City of Kingston, with planning staff. There was a pre-application meeting. And some of the big takeaways in terms of what the site should look like in the design, a big one right off the bat was maximizing open space on the site, an idea of creating a village green. Maintaining the views across the site to St. Mark's Church. The HCD actually speaks about specific sight lines to that church, so be respecting those and maintaining them. There was a desire to have pedestrian access through the site, so if that village green is preserved, that can be pedestrian ways. It could head to St. Mark's Church. There was a request to separate open space from parking and from the vehicles. So as I said, parking lots were moved from the west side of the building to the east. But not only that, there aren't, in the current iteration, there aren't even any driveways on that side of the building. So the west side of the building next to the village green, it's landscape space right up to the building. There was a desire to move the development toward Highway 15. One of the things we've requested in the zoning amendment is to reduce that side yard. So the adjacent vacant D&D lands, we've asked for a reduced side yard to get the building as close to that side as possible. We looked at having a buffer between this development and existing development to the east. Again, in this scenario with that village green, that's very naturally accommodated. You can also use that distance, that where this building is proposed to be 3 stories in height, that having that distance, it creates a buffer between existing residential and that slightly higher building. The other thing was an idea to have housing along Wellington Street and to actually create a streetscape there. So where there isn't now, where it was a school, and now it's just vacant, is to actually now create a streetscape along there. So what the owner of the lands would like to do, they're in the retirement residence business, and they want to create a complex of varied personal care needs and different levels. So when we talk about allowing townhouses along Wellington Street in those buildings, what we're looking at is accessible units, having elevators in them. The idea is to create stacked towns, or sometimes called back-to-back towns, but basically 2 units on the first floor, 2 on the second. These are independent living units. They're for people who are probably in about their 70s, who are still, driving their car, cooking all their own meals, but occasionally, whether it's due to a spouse illness or their illness, or they just need a break, that they're able to use the main building. They could get meals there, go for a haircut, that kind of thing. But it's still very independent living. If you move then into the retirement residence, it will also have small suites, 1, 2 bedrooms, some other smaller suites that are, again, independent, but there's meals provided, there's limited kitchen, but people are still, quite healthy and able to live on their own. And then moving into a higher level of care. This isn't a nursing home, but it does provide a higher level of care, all with the idea of this idea of age in place, going from independent to needing a bit more care, but being able to stay within the same complex. It's very familiar, it provides for all the needs. So that's the intent for the site, is think of it as the age in place campus idea. So moving from there, from the consultation with the public and with planning staff, with coming up with an idea of really what they wanted to do on the site, the applications were made for rezoning. In support of that, a number of studies have been done. A lot of these studies are scoped because they're not at the really detailed planning stage of what the buildings will look like. So these have been scoped to say that yes, this site can accommodate these uses, and all for different reasons. So a land use planning justification report, a scoped heritage impact statement, stormwater management servicing, noise impact, parking, schematic views such as that one were prepared, tree inventory, and a survey of the property. So again, these were to show that this site is capable of handling this type of development. So again, getting into a little bit more detail of exactly what they're proposing. This drawing just shows more of the site plan view than some of the other ones we've shown. The retirement residence is 3 stories that's proposed. There's been a lot of back and forth about whether the roof line should be sloped or not sloped, and I'll talk about that a little bit more with relation to the zoning, but it's all around impact, and I think that's part of the ongoing discussion that will happen, again, in the heritage context, in the planning context, and with the surrounding residents. There would be 145 residential units within that building. Again, these aren't full apartment units, these are retirement type units, and then the townhouses would have 16 units. We're also recommending that the zoning contain provisions to allow other types of residential uses, again, because this is coming from the point of view of implementing the official plan, and where the official plan has said this is a residential use, so it's accommodating those uses. Although that's not the plan that we're putting forth now, it's to recognize that those uses are contemplated in the official plan. So I'll just go through a little bit. I'm not going to go through every provision we're proposing in the zoning, but just to give you an idea of some of the main highlights. We've suggested a site-specific R3 zone. The R3 zone in Pittsburgh Township is the one that allows apartment buildings. That zoning bylaw doesn't have provisions specifically for retirement residents. So we've used that R3 as the basis because it best captures a multi-unit building. But we've also pulled from surrounding zones. So the ones across the street, the R2-1, R1-20 and the R2-1, which are the zones in the surrounding properties. So again, the uses we're suggesting are single detached, semi-detached, stacked row dwelling houses, and the retirement residence. For non-residential uses, we're just including the type of uses that might be included within the retirement residence. Even though I think that's usually expected, we want to make sure that it's understood they'd be there, but they're intended to serve the residents of that building. The lot frontage for a single detached dwelling is recommended at 15 meters. This is what the surrounding zones have. I can tell you that's considerably higher than what, say, a new subdivision in other parts of the city would have, where they would typically have a minimum lot frontage of 9 or 10 meters. This is 15 meters, which is considerably larger. The front yard depth that's proposed on Wellington is 5 meters, and that's consistent with the other properties on that side of Wellington. For the height of the building, so in any case, the request is for 3 stories. There's a couple of things to think about here. Part of the reason, there's a couple of reasons for going for 3 stories. One is very functional to how that building, the retirement residence, will work. The idea is to have the common spaces all on the main floor, so your dining room, crafts room, that kind of thing on the main floor, and then rooms above that. For that building to function in terms of its staff and serving its residents, that's the best layout. The other advantage in this site for 3 stories is by keeping that building more compact and not spread out, it actually allows for that large village green. It allows to keep the building in just a portion of the site without spreading out longer and wider. And so that allows for that large village green open space and preserving of the viewscapes to St. Mark's Church. So we've added in 2 different heights, again, one for a sloping roof and one for a flat roof. And we've done this because there is still that conversation going on. Even at Heritage Committee, some of them said, no, it should be sloped roofs, some said flat. And I think that's just a conversation that has to continue, and it really won't be settled till the really detailed architectural drawings are done. The parking requirements are proposed to be adjusted. What is being proposed is now the consistent level of parking for any retirement residence throughout Kingston. So it's consistent now pretty much across all the bylaws. What it does is it considers each retirement residence unit 2 equals 1 unit, and then it's 0.6 parking spots per unit. We've included a definition of retirement residence, and that's to clarify that apartment buildings aren't allowed here, that this is specifically for a retirement residence. And then we've also defined that stacked row dwelling house to understand what that building form is. So just to summarize, the purpose of this application today is to establish what the uses are on the land that would be permitted. It's also to establish in the zoning bylaw what appropriate standards would be, so things like setbacks and height, parking levels. The official plan has established that these lands should be used for residential use. When we look at a retirement residence on this property and we look at the supporting studies, it is viable for this, and it does meet technical requirements and can meet heritage requirements. And there definitely is going to be a lot more conversation on this application, and there are future applications no matter what. And that would be things like site plan, heritage permits, site plan control, and the holding provision. All of these will deal with the detailed design and the technical details of the site.
Thank you very much. Could the planning staff speak to the presentation, please?
Mr. Chair, this application and public meeting was provided in accordance with the Planning Act, which included mailing notice to 68 properties within 120 meters of the subject site, as well as signage being posted on the site 20 days in advance of the public meeting. And a courtesy notice was also placed in the local newspaper on March 27th. In regards to correspondence, staff have received 6 letters received to date, 3 of which are included on the agenda and 3 on the addendum to tonight's agenda. All received correspondence and future correspondence will be reviewed and addressed in a future comprehensive report. In accordance with Section 37 of the Planning Act and Section 9 of the city's official plan, staff may be seeking community benefits for their proposed development if council approves any increase in height or density on the development. So staff are therefore also seeking any input from the community with respect to any potential community benefits that may be sought through this public meeting process. The types of benefits that can be considered are outlined in the city's official plan, but I can just outline a few of them so you have an idea of the types of benefits that can be asked for, providing various housing types, providing additional parkland dedication, improving access to public transit facilities, providing accessible pathways, public areas and connections, providing public parking, providing community and open space facilities, conserving cultural heritage resources, protecting or enhancing significant views, providing public art, providing green technology or sustainable architecture, providing improvements to the streetscape, or including any local improvements that are in city documents, such as the city's community improvement plan. City's staff are in the technical review process with respect to this application, and the applicant has been working with staff in reviewing and discussing the particular housing forms proposed against the city's official plan and the Berryfield Heritage District Conservation Plan in order to achieve compliance with those policies. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to, are there any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Sanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondered, for the green space that's at the back, like the northern portion, are the trees going to be left in place there?
Yeah, detailed land plans haven't been done at this stage, but certainly the discussions that have happened so far would be, yes, that those would be kept. And my understanding of the grading of the property and the way the building would fit into the property, that it is entirely feasible that that would just stay in the state it's in now.
Thank you. For the proposed terraced row houses, the 16 suites, basically what's in all the comments is that they're, the residents are afraid of the massing of that. Do you know if the townhouses, if they're going to be built on top of the bedrock, or if you're going to be blasting or backhoeing them so that they're deeper into the ground? Because when you put them on top of the bedrock, it makes them appear even taller than, 2 stories.
That one I have to, as I recall, they do not. And so I can't answer that really clearly. I mean, we're not requesting any relief from the bylaw in terms of height provisions for that use. So they'd be within the standard townhouse height, whether they're into the bedrock or not.
Thank you.
Further? Can I ask the Vice Chair? I just have a couple of very quick questions. Is it a requirement for an archaeological report to be done on the property? And that will indeed be part of the comprehensive report?
Yes.
Thank you. My other question is, probably heard me whine before, I'm not a big fan of payment in lieu of parkland. And you talk about the village green being something that the community could enjoy. So I'm assuming that there would be enough property that you have no intention, or the developer has no intention of payment in lieu of parkland, that there will be green space made available. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so the applicant has been in discussions with the City of Kingston for many months, and some of the very earliest discussion did happen around that green space and what the scenarios would be in terms of would it be dedicated to the city or would it be an easement, that people could use. No decisions around that have been made, but that's the type of conversation that's been happening. Now, until we have a site plan, until there's actually development approvals, we don't know the amount of land, but it's never been the intent that it wouldn't meet at least the Planning Act requirements. Certainly, if this scenario goes ahead, it's well in excess of what the Planning Act requires. So there is a potential there to have a lot of open space there.
And I appreciate the number of parking spaces that you're recommending, given the nature of the tenancy on the site. My mother was in a senior's residence for some time, and the main problem seemed to be with visitors parking. And I'm wondering how you might plan to accommodate that. How many spaces will be made available for visitors parking?
So I can't tell you exactly how it's broken down between visitors or employee, but this owner is developing this type of residence all across Ontario. And, they're doing it to a level to really meet their clients' needs. So certainly they want to provide enough parking that includes both the residents who do still have a car and staff as well as visitors. And the site is so big, it's not hard to accommodate parking.
I appreciate that, and I know that that is a site plan issue as well, so it'll come up again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will now open up for any public comments that people may have. And we have a microphone here and a microphone right over here. So just grab a mic and introduce yourself, if you would. Yeah, and please give your name and address for the clerk, and also 5 minutes is what is the prescribed time. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Christine Sipnowich. I live at 249 Main Street in Barriefield Village. I'm president of the Barriefield Village Association. The Barriefield Village Association, the BVA, whose aim is to conserve the heritage of Barriefield, welcomes the opportunity to respond to this development proposal. We've had a cordial relationship with the proponent, who we've met on several occasions. However, we are disappointed that our input on the plans presented to us last October, input that was substantive, constructive, and critical, has had no impact whatsoever on the current proposal. It's therefore vital that we put our case before you in particularly strong terms. First, we do appreciate that there will be open space accessible to the public, although of course the main purpose of this space is to provide an amenity for the residents of the retirement complex. We're also glad to see the retention of Barriefield's historic grid street pattern for road access. However, we have a number of concerns as noted in our submission, which is the last letter in your package. I'll flag some of the key issues here. First, the height and massing of all the buildings is incompatible with the goal of the Barriefield Heritage Conservation District Plan at 3.2. to preserve and protect the rural character and the existing low-rise residential character and profile of Barriefield. Second, in particular, the proposed townhouses fronting Wellington Street, a crucial streetscape purported to soften the impact of the principal residential building, are inconsistent with 4.51A of the Barriefield Plan, which states that new construction must be compatible with the heritage value and attributes of adjacent heritage buildings and adhere to the character and rural atmosphere of the surrounding neighborhood with regards to lot patterns and sizes, heights, massing, setback, building scale, footprint. Third, the proposed townhouses are also at odds with 4.51B that stipulates new construction take inspiration from traditional forms of Eastern Ontario architecture. 4.1C that stipulates new construction maintain the height and rhythm of the existing streetscape. 4.52A, that stipulates new construction reflect and be compatible with pre-existing forms and massing. 4.52B, that stipulates, given most existing buildings are 1 to 2 stories, with the majority being 1 to 1.5 stories, new construction shall be, quote, no taller than 2 stories or no taller than the average height of any adjacent heritage buildings, whichever is less. 4, when these townhouses were first proposed, the BVA executive was led to believe they would be similar in scale and massing to existing Berryfield houses. We were taken aback when a draft plan circulated last summer proffered, in effect, 4 monster houses. The proponent then suggested row housing in order to minimize the overall footprint, to which we were initially amenable. The application includes diagrams showing both freestanding houses and a row, which many in the village are understandably dubbing an apartment block. The proponents contend that these houses, row or not, are no larger than some Berryfield houses, but the diagram on page 7 of the Planning Justification Report clearly shows this is false. Even the larger houses on Main Street are significantly smaller than the proposed buildings. 5, the setback and landscaping for the townhouse buildings is also at odds with adjacent heritage properties on Wellington Street, as set out in 4.52C of the plan, and in significant contrast with the large setback of the former Horton School. 6, as for the main building, the BVA understands that its dimensions will differ from Berryfield houses, but the building should nevertheless respect, complement, rather than undermine, the district's built form and cultural heritage value. 7, we're alarmed that it is a massive 3-story structure, since in our early discussions, we were led to believe that the building would be largely 2 stories. Note that Horton School, a sizable building much larger than any in the village, was only 2 stories high. 8, reducing the massing and height of the building would also enable protection of views as prescribed by the plan at 4.87. The view from Drummond Street is obstructed due to the massive size of the proposed building. 9, reducing the density and size of the proposed buildings would also minimize the impact of delivery and traffic and scope for light pollution, which threaten to undermine the goal at 3.2 of the plan, to preserve and protect the rural character of Berryfield. Finally, it's worth stressing the significance of this proposal. Founded in 1814, Berryfield's heritage is famed in Kingston and beyond, celebrated in a recent heritage festival, 2,000 people attended, and an award-winning book. Berryfield's unique heritage meant that it was the first heritage conservation district to be designated in Ontario. The current plan for Berryfield came into effect in 2016 after a great deal of consultation, discussion, and hard work. Its hard-won provisions were urged by the BVA in order to protect the village's heritage character. Homeowners throughout the village, many of modest means, must live by these provisions. Corporations should live by them too. It would be a terrible indictment of heritage conservation in Kingston if the plan's first real
30
test...
seconds.
Yeah, it would be a terrible indictment of heritage conservation in Kingston if the plan's first real test ended up forsaking the heritage of Berryfield. In sum, we request that the height and massing of the proposed construction be reduced in order that the proposal may comply with the policies of the Heritage District Plan for Berryfield. We hope you agree that we can welcome a retirement residence into the community of Berryfield without destroying the village's heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments or questions?
We'll get you to the microphone.
You'll need to use the mic. And just by way of information, the questions are gathered and the comments are gathered, and there's an opportunity for the proponents to speak to them after everybody has spoken. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Elma Litcherson, 16 Drummond Street. I am also very concerned about the traffic patterns in the village by the density of the population. I welcome retirement residents in the village. I think we need another good residence in the east end of Kingston, but the whole profile of the village will be destroyed by a 3-story structure. There's a beautiful retirement residence outside of Gananoque that's 2 stories, and it is built in a way, even though it's not in a heritage area, to look like an older building. I think it's possible to make a worthwhile investment for your company to do a similar type project. And I looked at the number of parking places on your plan, and they don't seem to be sufficient to me for visitor parking, staff parking, and residence parking. Because you have to remember that the streets of Berryfield are very narrow, and the current residents have difficulty with parking in their visitor parking. So if you add any additional parking from your facility to the streets of Berryfield, traffic will not be able to move through the village. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? There you go.
My name is Gerard Larhus. I live at 416 Regent Street in the village of Berryfield. I've prepared written submissions. I got them late, so I'm not sure if the committee members have them. If they do, I can keep this pretty short.
I believe we have them in the
Okay,
edits.
good. Then I will keep it short. I do want the committee members, though, to understand the magnitude and the monolithic nature of this building, these two buildings. We live in a village, a heritage conservation district, that has a total of 90 residences, 43 of which have heritage value. What's being proposed is another 161 residences. They say it fits in with the heritage plan. I don't need to go through what the heritage plan says. Basically, it says height no higher than the adjoining, the average of the adjoining buildings. What you need to understand by their own material is they're wanting to build two buildings that the footprint, not the total floor area, the footprint is 1.41 acres in two buildings. What they're proposing and requesting in a bylaw amendment is buildings that can be as high as 59 feet if it's got a peaked roof and 49 feet if it's got a flat roof. It is proposing, and if you look at these diagrams here along Wellington Street, it's hard to ascertain the exact sizes of these buildings, but somehow they're saying that the main building that they're proposing, the residence, by my extrapolation, is going to be at least 220 feet wide, 340 feet deep. With regard to the apartment block on Wellington Street, that building, by my extrapolation, and I think I'm being generous, when you look at, if that's 150 meters across Wellington Street, you're getting close to 90 meters in one monolithic building that is, even if you were very conservative, it's 260 feet long, and it looks to be about 60 feet deep and 38 feet high. When you're standing on Wellington Street, you ain't going to see St. Mark's Church. I want to point out that the entire Horton lot is conservation district. It applies to everything. You don't screen what you're putting behind it with this row house that obscures everything. You won't see that St. Mark's Church, and as I set out in my letter, you are at, or we would be at risk of severing what is the crown jewel of Berryfield. And certainly any view along Wellington Street is going to be obscured. Look at the material they provide. Look at the photograph in the heritage, in the heritage impact assessment report, and the photograph they use. You'll see the picket fence. There will be no view left of St. Mark's Church. So my concern is massing. Not opposed to the concept of resident retirement village or complex there. Not opposed to two-story buildings. Just this monolithic building that is going to be what people see when they come to Berryfield. They're going to, when they leave Berryfield, when they look at Berryfield from a distance. And I think it's slightly unfair that the residents of Berryfield are going to be held to these tight regulations of the conservation district, and we're going to have this nice bucolic village, which we all love, and essentially the proponents of this project are going to be selling the third floor as having this magnificent view over heritage Berryfield, and everyone else in Berryfield is going to have at least part of their view this monolithic, massive structure, and that's the reason why I'm opposed. It's just a scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? Yes, if you want to just move to the microphone. Thank you.
Is it on? It's on. My name is John Litcherson. I live at 16 Drummond Street. When I first heard that retirement housing was going to go in on the school property, I was quite pleased because I thought this was almost perfect for Barriefield Village. I wake up every morning. I live at 16 Drummond. I wake up every morning and I go into our living room and I look out our window and I can see St. Mark's Church. It's iconic for the village, wherever you are in the village, not just down from Main Street, not just out from Highway 15, but it's for all of those of us in the center of the village, on Regent Street, on Drummond, and on Lower Main Street. I would like to echo the message from the previous speaker about the sheer size of this, but I don't think what the members of this committee realize is that this building is going on the height of land in Barriefield Village. That is, where that land is now is higher than almost anything other than St. Mark's. A 3-story building is going to be massive. It's going to be imposing. It's going to replace St. Mark's as being iconic of the village. My wife has written a letter which outlines a number of other concerns. It doesn't appear in this package of documents here. That letter also refers to traffic flow increasing in the village, because if you have a building with 145 residents in it, plus another 16 townhouses, that means you have probably in any given week at least 200 new vehicles passing through the village. 200 vehicles don't pass through the village in a week now, other than just local residents. We live on Drummond Street. One of the egresses of this proposal opens out right onto Drummond Street, which means that Drummond Street is going to become a main thoroughfare for people coming out of this property, going down to Regent or I forget the name of the other street, and down the hill into the center of town. So what you're going to be doing here is having all kinds of additional traffic in the village too. That's all I have to say. The scale of this is really, really immense. It will, in effect, define Barriefield Village. It'll define Barriefield Village much differently than it is today. If it were, I don't think that there is another property in Barriefield Village that is as high as this is proposed to be, and all the properties that are even anywhere near 2 stories are all in the lower parts of the village. This is going to, as I say, dwarf the rest of the village. That's all.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry. If you'd care to just move to a microphone.
Pierre Dupre, 248 Main Street in Barriefield Village. I'd just like to say, in addition to what's been remarked before, it strikes me as odd that what's being asked here is, in effect, it seems to me, from the point of view of the planners and the developers, are kind of a blank check. We keep being told we're going to get more designs, we're going to get this, we're going to see that, we're going to see the other thing. But in the meanwhile, it seems to me the city and those of us living in Barriefield Village are basically asked to pass upon this and say that this is okay and go ahead. I just don't think we have enough information in the form, these things are all very, very schematic, and that's been admitted. I mean, nobody's denying that that's the case, but it seems to me it's a little bit like putting the cart before the horse here. We're just being told, oh, all those things will come in the fullness of time, and you'll see what it's like eventually, and it'll be fine. And to some extent, yes, we have had good relations in the village with the developer of this site, but it does strike me that's a bit of a leap of faith. It's basically saying, yes, that we're going to admit and undertake that the developer will do the very, very best that they can, but there's been no evidence of that, and it has been pointed out. The various objections that were raised seem to have been basically ignored on the idea that information will be forthcoming at a later date. And I just don't see why the city should have to buy that. It seems to me that this is a developer that could afford to put the time and energy into presenting things in a much more detailed state before we're really asked to make a decision as to whether this is a viable or not a viable idea. For one thing, just to take one particular example, one of the things that was achieved after long discussion, as the city will be aware, to make the Conservation District plan, one of the things that after a great deal of discussion was finally agreed to was the idea that at least there would be one place along Wellington Street, we're only talking about one place, from which you would definitely have a preserved view of the tower of St. Mark's Church, which has been referred to by several people already. And even that, it seems to me, has been impinged upon. The plan, the schematic drawing which we see above us here, the building comes absolutely as close as possible to the line of sight from Wellington Street up towards the church tower. And that's something that was shown on the plans that were agreed to as being something that should be preserved. And even that, it doesn't seem to me, has been acknowledged, respected, let alone at all changed in light of objections and suggestions that were made in good faith by the various members of the Barrowfield Village Association to the developers. So I would say that the city should surely be in a good position to require a lot more information, and I hope that will happen before we go ahead. Everybody wants this to be a success, and we just don't see that we have enough information to make the leap of faith, nor does the city for that matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. The public meeting indeed doesn't reflect a completed proposal. That comes a bit later with the comprehensive report, where the public again will have an opportunity to speak to any recommendations that come forward. But staff job right now is to listen to the concerns expressed and for the comprehensive report to speak to those concerns or reflect those concerns. So if it seems that this isn't a comprehensive report yet, it's because it isn't a comprehensive report. It's a public meeting to look and to express your concerns. So thank you. Any further questions or comments from the public? Going once? Going twice? Thank you very much. Now is an opportunity for the proponents to speak to any of the questions or comments that were made, and for staff to have an opportunity if they wish to weigh in. Thank you.
So in terms of my response, I was actually going to say just what you just said. I wasn't going to get into addressing specifics. We're really at the beginning of this process. This owner-developer has shown extremely good faith. They have met with the Barrowfield Villagers Association several times. They've met with the Heritage Committee. They're working with planning staff. As you can see in these drawings, they have made a number of changes already, and they continue this process. A public meeting is held at the beginning of this application process in order to hear what you're saying and to receive feedback so that we can take that and continue to work on the plans for this property. This developer is only interested in doing a very high quality development for this site. It's part of their reputation. They're creating a place that people are going to live and be your neighbors. So that is their desire. So really, this conversation is open and continuing, and it's unfortunate if you feel that's not the case, because this is just a continuation of what's been happening since last June. You can look at these drawings and you can see various changes that have already taken place. It's an evolution, and certainly, as I said, we're working with planning staff a lot on the policy context, the technicalities, but we'll also be working with the Heritage Committee and working with residents to come up with what is the best plan for that site. And definitely the different heritage concerns that have been brought up, we're really looking at the Heritage Conservation District Plan for guidance, which is that's what you use that document for. It's a guideline to use. Do you have anything? My colleagues I could reiterate, that a heritage permit will be required. That is another process. As I went through in my presentation, there is still a lot of opportunities where this will be coming back to this committee, but also to Heritage Committee, and those are all public processes.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. New.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add to Ms. Watson's comments that we are just embarking on a very iterative process in the review of this application. We will be looking very crucially at how this aligns with the explicit objectives of the Heritage Conservation District Plan for Berryfield that we spent a great deal of time and energy making sure that we got it right. So this is the beginning of a conversation. We've had some good discussions with the applicant to try and identify where we need to go from here, and this feedback tonight's been very helpful. So I do have a high level of confidence that this is going to move in the right direction. So for what it's worth, I just wanted to note that.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, I'll declare this public meeting closed. Thank you very much for attending, and remember, you're always welcome right up until a bylaw is passed at council to submit concerns. And there will be public notice again for when the comprehensive report comes forward. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask for a 1 minute or 2 minute adjournment to give people an opportunity to leave and to tag team with my vice chair so I can leave as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like an approval of the agenda. I'll take that from Mr. Osterhoff and Councillor Osenik. Thank you, thank you. So voted on? Yeah, we just need to do a vote. Oh, could I vote? Could you vote on that, please? All in favor? That carries. Confirmation of minutes? No, okay. Any disclosure? We need a mover and seconder to vote. Oh, I need a mover and seconder to vote, please. Osanek and
Councilor Osterhoff.
Councilor Stroff, you're going to have to.
Just get you to second the minutes.
Thank you. Okay. It's okay. Second the minutes, please. Okay, and then a vote, please, on the minutes. Thank you. That carries. Any disclosure of pecuniary interests? None. Delegations? None. Briefings? None. Business? I'm not going to read this because I don't see any members of the public. So I'm not going to read that. Okay, so we're going to move on to application for final plan of condominium at Kingsdale Avenue. All right. Questions from the committee? Any questions from the committee? Any questions from public? There are none. None. Could I have a mover? Lisa Osanek, Councillor Osterhoff. Okay, no questions, no answers. Okay, could I have us vote on this, please? All in favor? Thank you, and that carries. Moving on to application for Gardner's Road, Cataraqui Woods Drive, Woodhaven Drive, Highway 15. This is quite a large one. How about I'll read the file number? D14-039-2017 and D17-040-2017. Okay. So, any questions from the committee on this file? No, I see no questions. Any questions from the public? I see no questions from the public. Okay, so can I have a mover, please? I see two movers, Gary Osterhoff and Lisa Osanek, councillors. And okay, so we need to vote on this. Can I have a vote on this, please? Thank you. That carries. Okay. Thank you. Are there any new motions? Nope, I see none. Notices of motions? None. Other business? None. Correspondence? Do I hear correspondence for two? Okay, no for correspondence, okay. So I guess we just move on to the time and date of the next meeting is April 19th, 2018 at 6:30. Could I have a motion for adjournment? Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Osterhoff. Vote? All in favor? Thank you. And we are adjourned at 7:30.